Hi, my name is Paul Schursch and welcome to my shop. Welcome to segment 2 of Veneering 101. Now that you have gotten all your supplies together and your veneer, let's start assembling the pattern. So the way that I index will be by taking my first sheet down and taking two distinctive grain markings. Let me imagine one here and one here where I can actually put this grain marking directly over it. Right here, this is good. And now let me do a second one. Just because you have a piece of burl of a certain size does not mean that all the grain markings will match from one sheet to the other. So indexing is an important aspect of doing a good book match. So now that these 4 sheets are indexed, I can see that there was a slight shift from one piece to the other. Now it's time to look at the mirror and find out what pattern I'm going to use. Kind of like this pattern right here. It has this nice square kind of markings here in the center, and I really like that, but I don't know if it's going to be quite big enough. So before I actually do the selection here, I'm going to need to find out how big these are. So I'm going to make a small template here with right here, and this will kind of give me an idea of the overall size. This is just a rough size of what I'm going to need. Now, when I cut the book match, I'm going to make it a little oversized because it will be easier to trim down the outside, and then you won't have a situation where the burl will get too small and it won't cover your panel. And now let's set this up again. Okay, where's that nice 4-way pattern right here? Yeah, that's about right. Let's see. Ah, it fits. Okay, that looks good. What I'll do is put some tape along the outside or the back side of the mirror to really give me an indication of where I need to cut. So again, I trap the material I'm going to use underneath this edge, and with the razor, again, it'll take several passes. And the razor is somewhat low to the, I don't want to point it up this way, but it's somewhat low to the cutting angle, or a low cutting angle. And just take my time, don't rush it. It'll take maybe 4, maybe 6, maybe even 8 passes. This is where I'm going to use the jointing or the scuff sanding block. It's lifted up ever so slightly off of the table. That's all it needs. Now I trim the other side. The angle is not that important yet. We'll be retrimming one of these lines in a moment, but for right now, I'm just going to be trimming the 2 joints, or where all the joins are. All right, so we have 2 lines, or 2 joints, which I can now open up. That's one, and here will be the other. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just fasten the 2 sides together, and I want to look here to really try to match up the grain as best as possible here. I'm not really concerned about this square joint down here. There may be some minor shifting that goes on, but this is now exactly where I want it to be. These little markings are opposed to each other. To anchor it down, I first fasten the tape on one side or press it down firmly. Draw the tape over the joint, tear it off, and actually it clamps it or it pulls it together. Once the joint is together, I put another piece of tape over, running along the lengthwise of the joint. Again, I'll do this for the other side as well. All right, I have the 2 halves. Now, what I would like to do is to turn them over, and I'm going to line them up. Now, the lining them up is take one, shift it around, line it up on the joint on both sides, and make sure it's indexed properly again, because it can shift up and down until it reaches the best or the most optimal match. Now it's time for me to cut this last line. And now I should be ready to assemble. Here, putting the tape on, what I want to do now is just match up the middle joint. You know, in professional work, you'll always see this joint, or where the two pieces of veneer join, being exactly together. It's always a sign of care and attention to a book match, which is apparent in some of the finer work. Okay. And there is my four-way book match. So here I have the veneer that came with the kit. Now the walnut I'm going to be using for the back of this panel. So I'm really going to put this aside for now. These are the two pieces of veneer which I'm going to use. This will be the fillet, or the small 1/8" strip, and then I will have some cherry on the outside of that. I think that'll look nice. So the first thing I need to do is trim this down to size. Again, I always do the center middle joint, and then I'll start adding pieces of veneer or adding elements onto that. So the first thing is trimming it to the length, and I can fold it on this tape line. Okay, you see that this is the glue surface. I'm going to fold it, make a couple of marks here. And this is with my template. And put it right over the edge here. And with the razor blade, again, the razor blade is put with a pressure just slightly tensioning it against the bottom, not angling it, going straight down, but just with a slight pressure into the edge. And take your time, don't try to cut through it at once. You know, it may take a couple of passes while it's together this way. Makes sense to joint edge it. I'm going to open it out, and now I'm going to go the other way. Cutting the fillet is done in a number of different ways. You can cut it with what's called a veneer guillotine. You can use a veneer saw, a table saw, even a festool circular saw. There's many different ways, but there's also a way to cut it with a razor blade if you're careful. Here you can kind of see that I have these two screws put on either side of a block of wood, and I have a very small space underneath here in order to rest or to use as a stop for veneer. It is infinitely adjustable. By moving these screws in and out, you can make a parallel line, or you can shift it back and forth to make the width of fillet that you need. So this allows me to put the veneer on. It sits underneath these screws, and the razor cutting edge moves up to it. And I can cut, again, being very gentle with the razor. This is probably enough to have two, and the rest of this I can save for any kind of project in the future. And now it's time to put on the border. Now I can certainly do a straight border by cutting strips this way, but I would like to add something of a little more visual interest. I'm going to start by cutting some strips at 45 degrees. So I have my first line cut. I'll put this spacer in. Okay, so I have the 4 borders. In order to put these on, what I first want to do is go to the other side and put some tape along this, what's called the glue surface. Both sides. overhanging just a little bit. I can put my fillet on. This is in the middle here. And now I want to put on these 45 degree, and I'm going to pass through the center. This is the center or the middle of the panel. So I'll have one with the grain going this way, and this side here going the other direction right here. I'm also going to secure this just a little bit because this tends to be a little bit loose where it laps over the veneer. Line this up on my center line. Now, I don't want to touch my fillet. I only want to cut the cherry wood, and so I need to put my razor blade right up next to there, and I'll be cutting through first one and then the other. One, and I can take out this other one right here. And fasten all this together. And now the other side. What I need to do first is to cover this side with blue tape. Let me trim these edges. I'm going to take off all the tape off of my glue surface. So as I hold it up to the light, I can see if there's any gaps. Right now I have some minor, very minor gaps that will be filled through the gluing and finishing process. If there are big gaps, or something which is larger than, let's say, a 64th of an inch, I would need to go back to the show face and try to really pull it together. Worst case scenario, you would need to break this seam apart and maybe sand the edge or try to get it, or recut the edge to get a nice tight seam. At this point, this is ready for gum tape. The secret with gum tape is that you want to make sure that the surface is wetted adequately. There's a shiny surface, a dull surface. The shiny surface has the adhesive on it. That's hide glue, which is water activated. So the best way to do that is to take the sponge, push it down in the sponge, and then strike it with your finger. This makes sure that the adhesive is activated and it's not tacky, and it needs to be slimy, really, really slimy. I put it on, and if the tape is ever so slightly translucent, it works, it's working. Burnish it down with a cloth. Also, I'm going to, as well, I would like to put some tape around the perimeter of my panel, which will help support it through the glue-up process. Again, remember that this is my show surface, my show face. The glue surface is on the other side. And this tape, once I've glued up, I can reactivate it by moistening it with water, and it should come right off. Now the gum tape is affixed, but it still needs to dry. When I put water on veneer, it expands. It'll turn into a potato chip if I leave it this way. So what I do is I like to put it into what I call the magic press. That's any surface that you're working with. In this case, it's a mat. Keeps it flat through the drying process, and if it goes in there like a potato chip, it'll come out flat. That's why I call it a magic press. So that's all for now in segment 2 of Veneering 101. We'll see you next time in segment 3, where we get to glue this veneer onto the core. Bye for now.